Okay, so hello everybody, and thanks for joining us for our first Scottish Testing Group webinar of the year. It's very exciting to have you here. My name is Andrew. This is my first time hosting one of these webinars, so please be patient with me. But very glad to be part of this. We're very lucky to have as today's guest, Jackie MacDougall, and as you can see here, our talk is all going to be about Testing Center of Excellence. But before I give you an introduction to Jackie and let her start off, I'll give you a quick introduction to Scottish Testing Group, just in case this is your first time attending one of our webinars. So the Scottish Testing Group, founded in 2002, we're the longest running testing community in Scotland. Although we are obviously based in Scotland and focused on Scottish testing community, we're open to people joining from anywhere and everywhere. A webinar like this is a testament to that, because you don't necessarily have to be in Scotland to be joining it, as we will find out a little bit more about later. We are all about promoting and sharing excellence in the testing community, and do that through these kind of online events. We also have in-person events, a whole host of stuff. We've got a website with an archive of blog posts. We now have a podcast, which Brian hosts, which again, we'll hear a little bit more about later. But that is who we are and what we do. And if you are interested in getting involved with the Scottish Testing Group, whether that's doing something yourself or just how to support us, here's some info about that. We'd be really keen for anyone to, if they have ideas for hosting a webinar like this, if they have a blog post they want to write, if they'd like to be a guest on Quality Blether, a podcast, all of these things we're really keen to hear from you about. So please get in touch either via social media or there's our email address there to find out more. So really, really keen to hear from you, and that's who we are. But enough about us. I'll now get to the matter of discussion today, which is obviously our very exciting webinar from Jackie here. So a quick introduction to Jackie. So Jackie is a QA director. She's been working in IT and software testing for 25 years. She came into the industry as a test manager. From there, moved into consultancy, and in consultancy has worked in a big variety of different types of businesses, different sectors, and across different tools and technologies. And she specializes now in bridging the gap between the kind of complex technical solutions and the business client side understanding of that. She's also presented at many kind of conferences and events like this before, previously at the user conference for advanced automated testing and at Eurostar as well. And although she grew up in Scotland and is from Glasgow, is currently living in America, in New Jersey. So we're really glad that we were able to make this time zone work. I gathered it's very early in the morning just now in New Jersey, so we appreciate that. And one last fun fact that I enjoyed is that Jackie's also a drummer, which I don't know if it'll come up in today's discussion, but I'm definitely keen to hear more about that. But that's enough for me and enough about STG. I think it's about time I hand it over to Jackie herself. So if you're ready to go, Jackie, I'll pass it on.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much. Let me share my screen.
I'll also say as well, questions can be popped in the little question box there, and we'll have time to go through those at the end.
Okay, so you can see my screen, okay, yeah?
You can see.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start by saying thanks, everyone, and good morning from New Jersey. It's just after 7:30 here, so I am just about awake. I've got my coffee beside me, and I'm sure I'll be awake enough to go through this. But Thanks very much to Sonia and David and Andrew for inviting me on, and Sue as well. It's been a real pleasure to be asked here, and I'm really excited. Like Andrew said, I'm living in New Jersey, but I still keep in touch with the folks back home, so it's great to be invited on, and it's my second time Scottish Testing Group. For those of you who've been here for a while, you might remember our testing on trial event a few years ago. Well, several years ago now, actually. It makes me feel old. But I'm going to talk today about, well, the title tells it all, how to make a TCoE as good as Top Gun and help prevent failure. I'm going to put a little caveat on that, in that I'm not promising your TCoE will be as good as Top Gun, but some of the lessons learned that I've got that I can share with you have definitely been enhanced by a few insights that I've got into the Top Gun program. So let me start by telling you a little bit more about myself. So as Andrew said, I'm from Scotland originally, went to Glasgow University, married with 2 kids, and up until 7 years ago, was quite happily working in Glasgow and Edinburgh with a number of the different companies that you'll see listed under there as well. For those of you who know me, you know that the move to America was a big shift for me. I was quite well established in Scotland in my happy little role, and then hubby said, "Let's go." So packed my bags and went. Fun facts about me, as Andrew said, I've learned to drum during the pandemic. I love sea otters. I like gaming. And my favorite movie actor is Cary Grant. So that's probably the most important things you need to know about my social life. And then some of the organizations and conferences I've been involved in. Obviously, I've been involved in Eurostar several times. Been to UCAT and presented at Scottish Testing Group. A couple of other initiatives that I've been involved in: Girls in Tech UK and Women in Agile. And in the US particularly, I got involved in the Women's Inspired Network as well. So some really important organizations there, and I'm still continuing to be involved with you guys as well. So it's great. But enough about me. I want to tell you more about this talk. So you saw the title, but I want to tell you exactly where this talk came from, what's it all about. And really this was, I don't know, for the past 10 years or so, I've been hearing, you see some of the quotes from these reports that go back as far as 2013 and probably before, saying that test center of excellence don't work, they're a thing of the past, they don't work with agile. And quite frankly, I don't buy it. I'm one of these people who I've been through setting up a test center of excellence. I know that they can work. So all these excuses that I was hearing, I was like, well, they are just excuses. I'm sure it's not just the fact that it's a TCoE that means that it can't work with agile. There was one little glimmer of hope, and David pointed me to this when we were prepping for this call, which was the World Quality Report last year that says, there's a kind of reversal of the trend. I don't know that there ever was a trend to begin with. I've not seen any organizations come away from the idea of TCoE. In fact, if anything, it's been more and more organizations just getting into it, and they're just starting on their testing journey. So there's definitely some value in it. And what I wanted to talk about today is how can you get the most out of it? How can you try and avoid some of the pitfalls that typical organizations fall into when they try to set that up? And what can you do about some of those challenges that you're going to face? Talking about the challenges, so I'm not going to go through all these one by one just now, because there's a few slides later on going into the detail of them, but this kind of sums it up really. There's 9 major things that I've came across. There's probably tons more, but these are some of the common ones that I'm going to address in today's talk, and really just give some of my insights into what could be done. It's not necessarily going to be the only answer, but what you can do to try and avoid some of these challenges. One little caveat I'm going to make is that I'm calling it a test center of excellence, and you'll see I've got an official, the obligatory official definition from somewhere or other. It happens to be PMI in this case, but really when I'm talking about a test center of excellence and all these lessons learned and challenges that people face, it doesn't have to apply to just a test center of excellence. Whatever it is that you call your testing organization, these lessons learned and challenges that you might face are probably applicable there as well. And some of the advice that I can offer in those challenges would be applicable for you as well. So it's definitely not just a little box that it goes in and it's only for TCoE. And the other thing is, and you'll see from here, the TCoE definition is a very specific thing here, but lots of people call themselves TCoEs that don't meet this definition or are wider than this definition. So I don't believe that this label is really that important. And I don't believe that the challenges that people face are specific to TCoEs either. So yeah, I've already dismantled my title there, so but we'll move on anyway. A couple of references I wanted to put in here. I mentioned Top Gun in the title, and really this was because I started a blog for my company. I think it was last year, and as part of that, I was doing a lot of research, and I thought, what can I do? What can I say? Where can I start with this? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back right to the beginning. I'm going to see where I can find the very first reference to centers of excellence. Not necessarily a test center of excellence, but where did the term center of excellence come from? And there was a couple of really useful articles that I came across, and one was about Top Gun, and the other was about New York Medical College back in the 1850s. And these two articles, I read them, and they did reference Center of Excellence, and I thought, wow, this stuff was going on way back in the day, and obviously not in IT either. So I thought, but some of the things that were mentioned in the articles really resonated with me, and I thought these are really valuable insights and things that I think I felt I could apply to my experience, and I think it would be useful to share with other people. So that's where the rest of the blog post and this talk came from. But take a look at those links if you get a chance after the talk, because they're really worth reading. So the first couple of challenges that I wanted to go over really come under the kind of broader title of accountability and vision. And they are the fact that if you have no senior management buy-in or no champion for your TCoE, you're going to run into problems. And the second is that if your QA organization, whatever you call it, is not aligned with the business or IT goals, you're going to run into problems as well. Basically, from a senior management buy-in point of view, if you don't have that high-level sponsor or champion, someone who can really fight your cause, it's going to be difficult for you to get those changes put in place, whether they be cultural changes and process changes, whether you need financial support, you need money given to you to help make some of those changes happen. It's going to be really difficult for you to do that. And a couple of things you can do there are obviously you can look at past failures the organization you're working with has had and demonstrate how, oh, if you'd had a TCoE or some kind of test organization, that would have helped prevent it. That's easier said than done, and one of the best ways to do that is obviously try and quantify the cost that it's meant, and that's really, really difficult to do. Because part of the problem is with an organization that is just setting up, they don't have anything in place, they don't have any mechanism in place to collect those metrics that can help them quantify the cost. So it's more of a gut feel. You know they're doing badly, but nobody can tell you how badly. Nobody can tell you what it's costing. So that's really, really hard. But you can still go back and retrospectively do it. It's kind of finger in the air type stuff, and it's not very scientific, but it does give people an indication. So if you know that a particular failure cost you 2 months of delay on a project, you can work out, what is that, per man day? If we'd had a test team in place that cost X amount, would that have offset the cost of the delay? And you can try and work back that way. If your organization does have metrics, then try and again do the analysis and do the investigation to kind of articulate what that cost is. How did that failure cost the organization? And if it can't be done in terms of money, what did it cost them in terms of time? What did it cost them in terms of reputation? All of these things can help you persuade somebody at some level that there's definitely value in having a testing team or test organization or a TCoE that can take that forward. And the last point there is if they're skeptical, start small. There's no point in trying to boil the ocean. So if you want their buy-in, prove it to them that an organization like this can work. Tell them to give you a chance to pull a small team together, start off small, do a pilot, articulate what the goals of that pilot are going to be, and work towards those goals then. But they must give you the buy-in in order to help you succeed there. Similarly, if you're not aligned, if the TCoE is not aligned with what the business are trying to achieve or what the broader IT goals are, you're going to be fighting a losing battle. You're going to be kind of coming head to head with people and not being aligned in terms of trying to achieve the same things. So it's worthwhile trying to spend that time up front, talking to the people, talking to the managers in both business and IT, trying to find out where are they heading, what's their strategy, what's their vision, where are they going, and how can the TCoE help with that? How can they come alongside on that journey and help achieve those goals? So that you're there, what you're doing is you're jointly establishing goals that help both the business and IT move along. And the other thing is, if you do this well and you do it at the start and you start talking to people using that kind of language, how can I help you? How can my organization help you achieve your goals? You start to gain trust and buy-in as well. I wanted to tie this back a little bit to the Top Gun experience. One of the reasons for the Top Gun program being put in place was that there was no accountability. There was a report that came out as a result of exercises after the Vietnam War. It's called the ALT report. So again, if you look up that article, you'll see more about it. But really, what they said was there was no accountability for review of what happened and whether they could do better, and they wanted to appoint someone to be in charge of this. So they appointed the chief of naval operations to have overall responsibility of doing that review. And then similarly on the vision side, when I looked at the article on the New York Medical College, what really struck me was that they had a very, very clear goal. The board of the college kind of came together and said, we want to have a clear collective commitment. We want to be the model medical institution for this country. And I just thought, wow, that's a really good vision. And no wonder they had some success. They had on the Top Gun side, they had someone at the very top who's going to be accountable for making these improvements happen. And then on the medical college side, there's this board who just had this fantastic vision. So I thought they were really good examples to draw on. Resources. Resources and practical process. Excellent resources and practical process. Um, so again, with Top Gun, one of the things that I noticed was that the very first training course that was put together was by a really committed group of pilots and instructors. They gathered intelligence, they put together real life training exercises based on their experience and based on their data. And they came up with lesson plans and lectures, and they were able to do that because they had done all these things themselves. They were really skilled people, so we're not talking about theoretical experts. They were people who'd done this in real life, and they were really, really skilled at what they did. And similarly, with the New York Medical College, one of the things they aspired to do was hire a really well-known, well-informed, well-educated, and esteemed faculty that would draw more esteemed faculty, but also draw really inspired students, people who were really serious about wanting to learn about medicine. What does this mean for modern TCoEs? Well, one of the things I've noticed, and I've been very, very lucky, I have to say, and I know there's some people I've worked with previously on the call, I've been really, really lucky in the resources I started with in some of the organizations I've worked with. So, but one of the things I know can do more harm than good is if you have lots of resources, but they're not skilled, or you don't have very many resources and you're trying to do tons and tons of work and you just don't have enough people. So not enough or unskilled resources is a bad thing. But what you can do about this, there's lots of things you can do, but I think one of the very first things you have to do is understand your TCoE resourcing model. How is your TCoE built? How is it structured? Are you a centralized pool of testers that are responsible for carrying out all of the testing in your organization? Or are you more like a testing community who try to follow the same best practice, but actually the testers are owned by various parts of the business and the budgets for them fall under other areas? It's really important to understand that, because if you don't, you can be trying to put in place something that's never ever going to work because you're always going to be in conflict with the area that owns them. Align the skills and resources that you have or that you want to have with your vision and strategy. So if you're TCoE strategy is we want to be really well known in the Scottish testing community, and we want to do lots of talks and conferences and be very visible. There's certain things that you're going to need in your practice. If you want to have a TCoE that is moving towards agile or is putting in place a new automation structure, then you need to be able to have people who have agile experience or have very good automation skills. It sounds like common sense, but making sure you understand what your vision is first. That's why I mentioned vision in the last slide. Making sure you understand where is it you want to take this organization and what do you want to achieve will help you then decide, well, what resources do I need to do that? Recruit the best. I know that sounds it sounds a bit trite saying that, but I've been in situations where you've been trying to hire people and you kind of run out of time. You think, oh, am I never going to find the right person? And you can be tempted to just say, look, this person's good enough. But one of the things I realized when I was reading into Top Gun and the New York Medical College is sometimes the good enough isn't good enough. If you really want to aspire to excellence, then you have to recruit the best. Maybe you have to wait that extra week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to see if the best is going to walk through your door. And if they don't, like I said, sometimes having the wrong person in can do more harm than good. So I would definitely recommend that you try your best to recruit the best. And if you can't get the absolute best, ask yourself, is having someone who's just good enough going to be good enough for you? Ensure people understand the roles and responsibilities. Obviously, if you've got, and this goes both ways, if you have a very small organization, making sure that if people have multiple sets of roles and that they have to multitask with, making sure they understand what they are is really important, because you need to get everything done, obviously. But similarly, if you've got a really large organization, you can have multiple people ending up doing, stepping on each other's toes, trying to do the same thing. So it's really important that you give people their roles and responsibilities and you make sure that they check in with each other as well as that you as a manager. So that's really important to make sure that obviously the work gets done, but obviously to make sure that they're getting what they need out of the role as well, and they're making sure they feel that they're valued. And then keep training, even skilled and experienced staff. Training is so important. And I know once you get to a certain level, once you become very senior in an organization, it's very tempting to say, oh, I don't need trained anymore. I don't believe that at all. You see, if you look back at the bio slide at the start of me, I said I'm a student of QA for 25 plus years, and I really do still believe that there's still things I'm learning about QA even today. It's maybe not through formal training all the time, but certainly training helps at whatever level you are, and training your skilled and experienced staff will encourage them to stay. If you don't train them, if you don't provide them in opportunities to learn new technologies or new techniques, they're going to go elsewhere where they can get that training. And then on the process side, the processes themselves need to be, they kind of go hand in hand. These processes need to be informed by real life experience. And I mentioned that before, having people who have done this work, not just, thought about it or read about it or been trained in it, but people who have lived it and breathed it, who've practiced it in real life. And I think one of the key things about your processes, in order for them to fit the organization that you're working with and to be useful to business and IT, is to be transparent about what your process is. I've worked in a few places where the business and the wider IT groups don't really know about what goes on in the quality or the testing team. And it's really important that they do, because they can sometimes provide insights that can help you. And they may even have ideas about how you can improve or how you can work together better. So it's really important to be transparent about what the processes are. Lead by example and demonstrate why the processes work is another one. Again, if you've got some success stories within your own organization, use them rather than outside case studies. Use them to show why things work, or also why they don't work. So if you've had an example of something failing within your organization that you've then turned around, that's a really powerful story to tell to another part of your organization about why they should be using your TCoE or why the TCoE is important. And like I said, focus on teaching and learning in terms of being open to change on how that process works. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. Learning through failure, but in moderation. Um, yeah, so there's two other challenges here: the having no governance or lessons learned, and then the kind of I see these being as two like flip sides of the same coin. Accumulated errors leading to loss of credibility. Um, Inadequate governance. So by governance, I mean someone checking in on you to see, is your TCoE performing well? Is it doing the job it's supposed to? Someone that you're accountable to say we should still exist as an organization. If there's no governance there, it can result in missed opportunities to improve. A couple of things you can do about this. I know, and obviously, having a really strong internal governance team or, small group, committee or whatever is really important. But some of the things that they can make happen is that retrospectives can be executed well. And by that, I mean, you're not just paying lip service. You're not just ticking the box to say, yes, we've done a retrospective. Yes, we've done the lessons learned. You're actually sitting down with people and really taking a look at what worked well. How does this affect our TCoE? What can we do better next time? If we can't do it next time, what can we do better that we need to start building on now so that not next time, or next time again, but next time plus two, we can have something put in place. So thinking about, those kind of short, medium, and long-term improvements that can be made. Proactive QA involvement as well. There's so many organizations I've worked with where QA aren't even involved in the lessons learned. And again, that's where, if we go back to the first slide, we're having that management buy-in or a champion. You can get that help to force the issue, to force QA to be allowed to be involved in these lessons learned or retrospectives. And you can obviously try and force your way in yourself, but that sometimes doesn't go down too well. So having an introduction or having some management buy-in and to help you get there, if you're not already involved, can be a huge help. And then the other thing that people often forget about is having a mechanism and process for actually suggesting change, and I mean outside of the lessons learned or retrospective process. So if you've got an idea for how you can improve things, where do you go with that? If you're a tester working in a team and you have a brilliant idea and you know that it's going to make a huge difference, who do you go to with that? Where can you formally get that recorded so that people just don't forget about it and it goes, by the wayside? And how do you make sure that gets approved and then acted on? So having a process and some kind of tool where you can record it. It can just be a spreadsheet, doesn't have to be anything complicated, but how do you make sure that spreadsheet doesn't get filed away somewhere and then forgotten about? How do you make sure that constantly gets reviewed? I said these are two sides of the same coin. Obviously, if you don't do things well, it's really important to try and do them better. There is a danger that if you keep failing at things, and I'm a big fan of that mantra, if at first you don't succeed, try again. But there is a danger that if you try things too many times and you do it very publicly, you can lose trust and credibility every time that you try to do it and that you fail. Um, and again, it sounds kind of trite to say this, but it's really important for big things, especially where they are done very publicly. Do as much as you can to get them right first time. And if you think there's a chance of them not being right first time, kind of do it on a small scale or privately. Don't make a big song and dance about it. Do it, kind of quietly on the side until you're sure that it's up and running. And once it's ready, you can kind of be more public about it. The reason I mention that is because I've seen a few organizations who um, don't they kind of go all in on setting up a TCoE. They're very vocal and very public about it in terms of what they say to the organization, but then they fall into some of the pitfalls we've already talked about. They don't have a champion, they don't have a budget, they don't put the right resources into it, and it ends up completely failing. And then when they come back and try and do it a second time, they haven't learned their lessons, so they do the same things again. And of course, the people on the ground, the IT, the wider IT group, the business community, the testers themselves who are part of this, they kind of lose faith. And everybody goes, yeah, we've heard this before. This isn't going to work. Well, you've tried this before. And it can really do a lot of damage from within before you even get started. So it's really important you think about that and think about, what do you want to tell people you're actually doing? Um, in the kind of public arena, what do you want to tell them that you're trying to achieve? And how all in are you? Are you really all in, or are you just doing it for some kind of exercise? This one's got it's all its own slide. Communication. Poor communication means less cooperation, basically, and less buy-in from people all across the board. One of the key things that I learned when I was reading through those two articles that I mentioned at the start is that communication is really important, which is why the responsibility and accountability for setting up the Top Gun program, making sure that the improvements that came out of the alt report were acted on, was really important. And they wanted to make sure that not only was someone put in charge of it, but they had to then provide some output. They had to, provide regular reports on what happened, what was the outcome, how were we doing with the program that was put in place. Having no communication or having poor communication, it means that you're not going to get that buy-in primarily from the people on the ground because they're just not going to see what's happening. But you're also going to affect other people along the way. So whether that's your own stakeholder, your own TCoE team, the wider IT or business, or even other parts of the organization you didn't even know were interested in what the TCoE are doing. And the other point is that sometimes that communication, you need to think about that even before you start, because you need to make sure the messaging about your TCoE startup is right. You need to make sure that people understand what it is you're trying to achieve before you go and start trying to achieve it. And for that, you kind of need to do a bit of, I'm going to call it wheeling and dealing, but it's not really wheeling and dealing. It's just publicity. You need to make sure that you're going out and talking to people and find, like I said, talking to the business and IT, finding out what they're trying to achieve. But not just from a goals and visions perspective, but just getting to know them, getting to know them, let them get to know you, let them get to know about your TCoE a bit more. So it's really important. There's three things that I've mentioned that you could do. Make sure you get the right message for the right people. And everyone knows this, you need to adapt your communication for different levels of people that you're talking to. So you'll need to talk to your champion and stakeholder in quite a different way from the way you would talk to your TCoE team. And that could be quite different from how you're going to talk to the wider IT and business. And even within wider IT and business, you might need to talk to individual groups in different ways as well, depending on what their need is and depending on how they will react to you. The right time, and by the time I mean the kind of frequency, cadence, that sort of thing. How often are you going to communicate with someone? How much information are you going to give them? What do they need to know? So just making sure that you're clear on, is it an ad hoc communication? Is this going to be a regular thing? If it's a regular thing, make sure they know it's a regular thing as well. And then the format's really important. I think especially after COVID, when a lot of things went online, webinars included, making sure that you choose the right format. Obviously, it's for people who are working remotely, it's less easy to do things in person, but sometimes an in-person event or an in-person call or meeting is needed, depending on what the communication is that you need to put to them. So whether it's meetings, emails, special events, I'm sure some of the Aegon people that are on will remember, we held some lunch and learns to let the business and IT come and meet us and find out about what we were going to do. You might want to, host some kind of charity thing that you're tied to, kind of half falls outside of work even. And whether you want to do things like blog posts or social media posts to kind of draw attention to the work that your group as a TCoE are doing, it will all help in terms of the communication about your TCoE. And then the last two, agility and flexibility. And by agility, I just mean agility with a small a, not IT agile. And the reason for this was the two main challenges that I've faced here. You can have different levels of QA maturity. If you have a big organization, you might find that there's some parts of the QA organization that they're doing really well. They're miles ahead of everyone else. Whereas there's some people who are still writing their test cases on Excel spreadsheets and still writing up the results by hand and so all that kind of thing. So you need to be careful that you're trying to cater for all those levels if you have them, if it's a big organization. And by that, I don't mean that you make everyone on the same playing field, that everyone has to be at the same level. That's not what I mean at all. It's trying to get the right pace for each area. So where you've got areas who are more mature, encourage them to continue to innovate, to continue to advance the processes and techniques that they're using, but ask for their help. And target champions in that area who can push it ahead, but also bring back lessons learned and help take that information that they've got about how to do things and how to do them well and how to start off in that advanced journey back into the less mature areas of the organization. And similarly in the less mature areas, try and find a champion there, someone who wants to advance, someone who wants to make the process easier, make it better. By that, you'll have to talk to them, obviously. So that's where the communication comes in. But talk to them, find out where are their pain points. A lot of people who are in areas like that, they sometimes just don't know what they don't know. So they don't know that there's a solution. But if you listen to what their problems are, you can, with your experience, as a QA manager or TCoE manager, you can try and figure out, what's something that could help them, and then talk to them about whether that's something that interests them or not, and try and get their buy-in to be a champion for that in that area. Then you get the two parts together. So you can offer to have those experienced resources come in and help some of the less experienced areas, but without forcing change. So it's more to kind of give them a demonstration or an example of how things can work, help them to the point that they want to be helped. So help them as far as they want to be helped, but without pushing them up to the level of the more advanced areas. And then lead by example. I've mentioned this before, those inside success stories. If you can bring those more advanced areas and less advanced areas together by telling the areas that need help about some of the success stories. And I don't mean, way advanced kind of stuff, but just some small hints and tips. Well, this is what we did. This is how this helps us a lot. But if you can do that inside your own organization, like I said, rather than going to some outside case study, it just has so much more power. Too much change all at once is a big danger as well. And sometimes when TCoEs are being set up, there's a whole load of other company-wide initiatives going on. So it might be that everyone's moving towards agile. It might be that there's a big infrastructure change going on. It might be that they're overhauling the release management process. Whatever it is, try and dovetail the TCoE startup and journey alongside other initiatives, because one of the things that can happen is that your TCoE attempt or your TCoE journey can just kind of get crushed in the roller coaster of everything else happening, or it can just kind of come completely off the rails and just get sidelined. So you need to be careful that there's not too much else going on at the same time. Otherwise, whoever your champion or your stakeholder is may be forced to focus on other things that are happening kind of at that level. Sometimes if there is too much going on, the right thing to do is just to wait. Wait until there's a gap. Wait until there's there's probably never a right time, but wait until there's a more opportune time to maybe piggyback on someone else's initiative. One example I mentioned there was release management. I've seen a couple of organizations that have gone through the process of, they've realized that the release management process and the tools and technologies they're using need overhauled. So they do make a big initiative and they overhaul that. They do a lot of work in it. That's actually a perfect vehicle for tagging TCoE initiative alongside it, because alongside release management, what do we have? We have testing. Testing goes alongside the or prior to and then alongside the release. So it's actually a perfect opportunity to kind of piggyback on that. So look for opportunities where you can dovetail or piggyback on other initiatives if there's a lot going on. And if you feel that there's just too much going on, that you're just not going to get the focus that you need, you're not going to get the buy-in, you're not going to get the budget, then wait for the right time, because if you don't, then you'll fall into the trap of starting it off, but then it just fails because you've got all these challenges that can't be addressed, and then you'll try again, and then you'll lose credibility. So just be careful, and if it's the right thing to do, wait for the right time to establish your TCoE. I'm going to wrap up now. You'll be pleased to hear. So what can we learn from the early TCoEs. And I deliberately didn't go into too much detail about all the parallels between Top Gun and the medical college, because I want people to go and read those articles themselves. But management buy-in, I think this is probably the most important, because you're always going to need someone to go and fight your cause. You're always going to need budget, and you're going to need someone to kind of, be a bit more forceful to some of the other groups as you're getting established. Once you are established, that's great. You'll probably have your TCoE will hopefully will have a good reputation, and you will be, the kind of champion, and you'll be able to do that yourself. But starting off, it's really important to have that management buy-in. And like I said, some of the places I've worked, I've been really lucky, and I've had that. I've not had to fight for that. But making sure you get someone in your corner at the top will help you be heard. Focus on excellence. I remember when I first went to Aegon, one of the things that the hiring manager said to me was, I don't just want a test team, I want a center of excellence. And that's really, really stuck with me. And it stuck with me my whole time through Aegon, and it's stuck with me since then. And there is a big difference. And that's why, when I was talking earlier about hiring the right staff, recruit the best, focus on getting the best. It's not just people who are doing the job, or even doing the job well, like I said there, but you need to have people who are really passionate. It's okay to have, a few people who are doing the job really well, but it's fantastic, and you'll do so much better if you have some people in your team who are excellent and who really aspire to be the best and better than they are just now. That's helped if you have exceptional teachers and mentors. So if you have really great managers and leads in your team, again, not just good, but exceptional. They need to be people who have lived and breathed some of these challenges, who have really walked the walk, not just talked the talk, and they have the battle scars to prove it. So people who have, maybe been around the block a little bit, maybe been to a couple of different places and have a lot of experience, have some of those people in your team who can really lift the rest of your team. The flip side of that, and people often forget about this as well, exceptional students. So the rest of your staff, the rest of your TCoE team, people need to be willing to learn. They need to not just be willing to learn, but they need to be eager to learn. So they need to be passionate. They need to want to be champions themselves. They need to be open to new ideas. And they are going to be the leaders of the future. They're going to be the TCoE managers, once you have long gone. So make sure you have exceptional students in there willing to learn as well. Strong but flexible processes. So this is where I this is where it all started, when I heard people talking about how TCOs don't fit with agile. They absolutely can, but they need to be flexible. So not a one size fits all process, but something that can be adapted for different projects, for different methodologies, but something that has the same principles at the core, and then can be improved in different areas at a tailored pace. And then last but not least, continuous learning and improvement. Objective lessons learned, really leading to improvements, making sure you do pay attention to what's working, and improve that even more, but what's not working and how you can fix that. And making sure people have a voice, people have a mechanism to get those ideas out. And I think that's me come to an end. Thank you very much. I think I'm open for questions now.
That's terrific, Jackie. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting insights there. So I don't think we have any questions in as of yet. So I'm wondering if there's anyone amongst the STG committee who has
I've
questions.
got one to start us off, Andrew.
Of course.
You hear me? Yeah. So, Jackie, you mentioned identifying the pain points, which is very important advice. If somebody was quite new to doing that was part of this testing centre of excellence, what advice would you give them to help them draw out the pain points from a stakeholder?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I've done this actually when I moved to one of my first jobs in the US. I was tasked with setting up this QA team, and I thought, well, I don't know what problems they've got. So I went and spoke to the development manager, and I said, what's not working here? Why do you need me? And he told me, he said, like, there's a couple of things, there's a couple of kind of internal team things, and then there was a couple of process things that he mentioned. I was like, okay. So once I got, I basically just went to him and said, what's not working? But I did that not just with him, but I did it with a couple of other people as well. I didn't tell him that I was asking other people, but I kind of got that collected view, so it wasn't just a single point. And then I kind of saw where the overlaps and what different people were telling me were. And I thought, right, I can see there's a couple of trends here. And then I started focusing on them. And then once you know what the focus points are, you can start, peeling away the layers of the onion. You see. So I went back to the development manager and I said, that thing you were talking to me about, well, can you tell me a bit more detail? Can you show me some of the documents? Can you show me some of the user stories that you were working with at the time? So then we dived into it in a bit more detail. But because if you ask someone, where are their pain points, they could give you like a big laundry list of 10 or 20. But the secret is trying to hone in on the ones that really matter. And that's where I got multiple opinions to try and find out what were the real pain points, because some of the pain points that he mentioned might have only been specific to him as well. And he might have been using me almost as I'm gonna get this new QA manager to go and fix my problem for me. But that wasn't a big problem for everybody else. So it's important to get that perspective, multiple perspectives from different people.
I've got a whole load of questions for you, some of
All
which
right.
we'll probably save for the podcast.
Okay.
But first up, talking about failing fast, but not too much. Upper management is notorious for being risk averse, and the whole concept of failure to them is an anathema. So how do you deal with that situation? How do you convince them that it is okay to fail, just as long as you don't do it all the time?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great question, and I'm actually going through that just now on some things that I'm working on. One of the first things that I would do is I'll tell them up front, like, we're not going to get this right first time. I know one of my big things is, get it right first time, but I tell them, like, we're not going to get it right first time. So, and I'll tell them, look, we're going to make so many mistakes in this first project that, you're going to think, why did I even start? But I think if you set that expectation, you say, look, but we're going to learn from these lessons, and then you show them that you are doing lessons learned, that you are tracking what comes out of those lessons learned, and you're tracking it not just from a words point of view, but you're saying, well, what difference did that make? So you need to try and put some metrics in place. I know there's some people who are against numbers and metrics and everything, but I think it's important that you can show them some difference between where you were before and where you are after you've failed. So yeah, I would start off by telling them I'm going to fail for a start, and then try and back that up with making sure I do the lessons learned, inviting them to the lessons learned as well, because I think sometimes senior management are so far removed from the actual workings of what's going on that they don't appreciate all the good work that goes into it. So the lessons learned has to cover some of that as well. And I think they don't always come, but I think it's a good idea to invite them every now and then to lessons learned or retrospective, so that they can listen in and hear what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Great, and that's a nice little segue to my next question, which is, how do you align the OKRs and the KPIs of your Center of Excellence to the bottom line of the company? How do you get it so that you're actually benefiting the company visibly, so that the management then buy in more?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. I mean, I think, and this is where I was saying, I think on the very first slide, the second challenge that I mentioned, you need to be making sure you're aligned to the vision of both business and IT. They'll have their own goals, so there'll be a higher set of IT goals, and I'm a big fan, and I do this in my own team as well. Not just kind of KPIs and money and things like that, but if we're talking about goals, one of the things I like to do is I say, well, what's the company goals? What we're trying to achieve there, and I cascade that all the way down. So normally what I see is there's a really strong correlation between the company goals and then your individual department goals. You can kind of see the match there. There's always a match. And I always try and make sure that when we trickle that down to individual team goals and individual staff goals, that they map onto it somehow, so that there's nothing anybody should be doing that they can't see where that fits in the department picture, and they can't see where that fits in the IT picture. And I think if you do that, it's very easy to then say, well, the money that's associated with the bottom line that comes from the company goals. It's easier to say, well, we as a team, we were able to achieve all these things, and here's how they correspond to the company goals. Again, metrics are going to be a huge help with that. Anything to do with money has to be backed up by numbers. So if you can show that you're reducing the time it takes to do testing by introducing an automation framework that costs you X amount of money to implement. You need to show over time, well, how much time did we actually save? And by time, what we really mean is how many man days of manual effort did that save? So it's trying to work that out. But like I said, I would start with the company goals, department goals, trickle that down, and then it should be easy to kind of map on the individual's goals. And then, like I said, if you can have metrics that kind of back each of those up, it's not purely scientific, because obviously there's other things that come into play as well, but it gives you an indication of whether you've went in the right direction.
Great. Just, I think one more before we answer the one that's in the Q&A. You mentioned maturity. How do you measure your people's maturity as well as your Centre of Excellence's maturity, especially because it needs to be flexible? It can't just be the traditional sort of TMMI sort of approach, because you've got agility in there as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really tricky one, and I don't know that I've got a great answer for that. You mentioned TMMI. Obviously, there's other models you can use as well to kind of formally assess your organization's maturity. You can just do something as simple as a SWOT analysis, and then do that periodically. You can kind of do a self-audit. I think the more interesting part of your question is, how do you measure your team's maturity, like your individual's maturity? And that's really, really hard, actually, because for me, it's more of a gut feel. And I know that's probably not the right answer, that there's probably some model or something where and I know that there's lots of HR things that you can do where you give people a label, whether they're an eagle or an owl, and all those kind of fancy things. But I get a really good gut feel about the people that I'm working with, and you can see that if you're working with them day in, day out, how they respond to challenges, how they respond to responsibility. And I could tell, a lot of the teams that I've worked in, I'll use Aegon again as an example, but I could tell where my strong pillars were going to be, the people that I knew I was going to be able to lean on, just after a few months, because they were the people who didn't even come to you when there was a problem. They just dealt with it, and you heard about it through some other channel. Whereas there's other people who, as soon as there's a tiny little kink, in the plan, they're all up in arms and go, "Oh my God, what are we going to do?" And you know that they're the people who are going to need a bit more hand-holding, so they're less mature. Whether they're the thing that gets me is everybody, whether they're the one extreme or the other that I mentioned there, they all have value to add to the team, and they all have strengths that you can find out what their strengths are and then leverage them. So if someone's maybe a bit flaky when it comes to little challenges, that they may have a strength somewhere else that you can leverage, and that's one of the things I like to try and do. So if I can't always influence the people that I inherit in a team, and I certainly just don't want to let people go because they're not the people I would have hired. It's trying to find out where their strengths are and say, well, okay, so this might be a really good job for you to do over here. This might be a really good initiative for you to lead because you've got particular skill set in that area. And again, I think I've done that in a couple of different organizations, and it's worked really well. And similarly, the people who do cope well, those pillars that I was talking about that I could lean on, the people who do cope well with pressure and challenge, making sure that they know they're supported as well, and making sure that it's recognized that they're dealing with that so it doesn't go unnoticed, and that you're sometimes taking the pressure off of them so they don't have to always do it.
Great, thank you. I think I'll hand back to Andrew now so he can ask the questions from the Q&A.
Sure, thanks, Brian. There's a couple messages in the chat. One's just a bit of thanks and a hello there. Always nice to see. Second one is the perennial question of the moment, which is, what are your thoughts on AI being used to generate test cases as a replacement for QA?
Yeah, I don't know whether to admit this on this forum or not, but I'm a bit of a skeptic of AI. I see there's lots of benefits of it, lots of uses for it. I feel like it's more useful in the development arena though. One of the things that I really love about QA is the fact that people always come with different perspectives, and I don't think any artificial intelligence can replace that. Yes, artificial intelligence can come up with a basic kind of rudimentary list of scenarios. If you feed it enough information, it can come up with some things. Do those things always make business sense? I don't know. I've not tried it. I would be skeptical if it did. Are they covering the most valuable test scenarios? You know, are they covering the most important, most critical scenarios for the business? Again, I don't know how we could ever. I don't think we could ever replace test cases written by real people with ones from artificial intelligence. I think it's a good marker if you know, like if you're a new tester and you're just learning and you kind of want to say, have I got all the right test cases? You know, have I thought about all the different things I can cover? But I don't think it can replace like the critical thinking that a really experienced tester will have, or you know, some of the skills that a professional QA person will have gained through their training. I don't think AI can do that. And I think there's a place for it, and I think AI is really useful at kind of, you know, like in some of the tools that we see, you'll hear about AI being used to enhance the kind of it's like automatic healing of scripts that are broken. So I think it's useful for that kind of thing. And it, like I said, it's useful as a checkpoint, you know, something that you can kind of make, you know, compare yourself against to say, have I got the basics at least? But yeah, I've tried a couple of different things in AI, and it's been good. You know, I'm surprised at how good it's been, but I don't think I would ever trust it enough to rely solely on AI rather than people.
Well, that's good news, well, certainly. Thank you very much. I think that is the extent of our questions. As Brian said, Jackie's going to be a guest on the Quality Dollar podcast, so look out for that for kind of a continuation of this conversation and more. But for now, I'll say thank you very much, and we'll begin to that thing. But so let me work my technology here. Hopefully we can see my screen now. Have I done it right? Maybe not.
Not yet.
No. Oh,
Oh, there you
there
go.
we go. Perfect. Okay, okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to give a quick insight into some things we have coming down the pipeline. Our next webinar is a similarly international one. We'll be joined by the Finnish testing expert, Craig Konen. And he's the author of a children's book, or I should say a book aimed at children about testing called Dragons Out. So he's going to give us a kind of insight into testing from a children's perspective, which sounds fascinating to me. So please tune in for that online. And we also have an in-person event coming up as well. And this one, hot button topic, comes courtesy of another testing expert, James Christie. And that's going to be a look at the post office scandal from a testing perspective. So that's going to be in Edinburgh in person. And both of these will be formally announced sometime next week. So make sure you sign up to those, and hopefully we'll see as many of you there as can make it. And I believe that's us for just now. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in and for your questions. A question about the slide decks being shared. I think we can do that. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Yes,
I can certainly send them on to you, Andrew, and then share them
Okay,
with whoever
perfect.
wants to see them.
So yes is the answer to that, which is terrific. Okay. Thank you very much, all, and we'll see you at a future event. And again, thank you very much, Jackie. Very much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Been a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, everyone.
a lot.